All right, we're going to go ahead and get started just in the interest of time and everybody have the time. Thank you very much for attending. My name is Sue Feldman, and our presentation today is going to be about extending Sugar CRM for large-scale federal-level application. I'm here with my colleague, Ben Schooley, and we're both from the Case Center for eHealth Research at Claremont Graduate University, and our colleague, Gary Richmond, who was a student on this project, also from Claremont Graduate University, and Vineet Agarwal from OSSQ, who is our partner on this project. So the purpose of this presentation today is to present a case study on how an open source CRM platform can be used to develop a customized solution. This solution was specifically developed to support an existing paper-based federal program, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a couple of slides. We're going to talk about what we did, how we did it, and any obstacles or challenges, and what we did to solve those, and at the end we'll leave time for questions and answers. So the program that we developed, or the application that we developed, is called Smartworks. So a little bit first about some context and background information before we get into opening the hood and letting you see what's under there. Smartworks is a productivity tool that we developed for this group of caseworkers that are called employment networks. And what Smartworks does is it provides employment networks with an electronic solution to manage a previously paper-based environment for administrative tasks and business operations. What this does is it allows them to focus more on their clients. Now, in this space, we're working in a federal space with Social Security clients, and these clients within the Social Security space are called beneficiaries, meaning once they receive federal benefits, they're called beneficiaries. This is important because in the slides, we go back and forth between calling these people clients and calling them beneficiaries. Another thing that's important to understand is that we go back and forth between calling the employment networks, or ENs, caseworkers. Those terms are all synonymous. An employment network is really a single entity for the case of this. So one of the things that was important for us to understand, and was important in our development of Smartworks, is to look at how can open source play in a U.S. government space. And while there's been a lot of uptake and growth in this area, Social Security Administration in particular is a little steeped in tradition as far as how they do things, what they use to do those things, and their ultimate goal. And so what we realized is that for Smartworks, this was not going to be accomplished if we took a top-down approach. And so what we had to do is we had to look at this from a bottom-up approach and look at who's going to drive the solution, who's going to drive the development of the solution, and who are really the end users. So as such, Smartworks was a collaborative effort, and it was a stakeholder-driven project. Ben and I work with an organization called Daniels and Associates. This is also supported somewhat by SESI, who is an SSA subcontractor, and also NINA, which is the National Employment Network Association. And when I say that these organizations supported Smartworks, I don't mean in a financial model. I mean in a kind of rah-rah model, like, yeah, this is great, we need this, go forward, develop, and then report back to us. As I mentioned earlier, Ben and I are from the Case Center for eHealth Research, as is Gary. He was an intern there. Our development partner is OSSQ, that's where Vineet is from. And we also had funding from a variety of places. We had funding from 2 private foundations and then a variety of other places. Now, what's important to understand in how this development came about is that this was kind of cobbled together. none of this funding came all at one time. It wasn't like somebody said, you know, here's $1 million, go out and develop. We had to do this incrementally. We had some stops and starts, and using Sugar CRM in this kind of environment was really an advantage to us. So a little bit about the Ticket to Work program. So Smartworks is an application that supports these employment networks or caseworkers in the Ticket to Work program. The Ticket to Work program is a federally legislated and mandated program that was signed into law in 1999. And the purpose of the Ticket to Work program is to assist people who are on Social Security benefits, so federal assistance, to assist them into re-entering back into the workforce. Get them jobs, get them working, keep them off of public assistance. I mean, that's really the motivation behind the Ticket to Work program. But when the Ticket to Work program was started in 1999, no one thought about, well, how is all this paperwork going to be done? What is it going to look like? Are we going to have fragmented systems? And what is that system going to look like? The system now, before Smartworks, is a loose leaf folder with a bunch of papers shoved in it and some Post-its on the outside, and maybe some Post-its on somebody's desk, and maybe a few tickler files. That is the system right now. Now there's a few kind of inventive ENs or caseworkers who have some Excel spreadsheets, everything from just lists of people to some kind of elaborate spreadsheet with connections between tabs and sometimes even connections between workbooks, so between worksheets and workbooks. But nothing is consistent, and it's all pretty disjointed. Okay, so how does the Ticket to Work program work? And it's important to understand this. In a moment, we're going to give you a demonstration. Ben's going to do that. He's going to talk a little bit more about what you see under the hood. Right now, we're just looking at the outside of the car. And so the Ticket to Work program, basically, there's a series of events. An employment network is under contract with the Social Security Administration. They have a beneficiary who comes to them with this ticket. It's not like a ticket like you think a ticket. It's more kind of an abstract ticket. It's like a piece of paper that says, okay, I have been given this number by the Social Security Administration. I can work. And the employment network helps a person with disabilities. The abbreviation that I use up here is PWD. Employment network helps the person with disabilities get a job and keep a job. And then while they're working, they achieve these milestones, and they're pretty complex. And when the person with disabilities who's working in this job achieves a milestone, then the employment network can submit payments. Now, these payments can go on for up to 60 months, 5 years. What happens with these payments is it is a piece of paper. It just looks like this. And it's faxed to the program manager that SSA contracts with, and it comes through as a fax. Now, sometimes it can be mailed through the mail, and we all know how consistent our mail service is. And those things get lost, and there's no verification on the other end from the program manager that, yes, we have gotten this piece of paper, yes, we have gotten this fax, or yes, we've gotten this through the U.S. Postal Service. So the tracking for these payments is non-existent currently in the current system. Now, these employment networks are relying on these payments for business sustainability. This is their business. So imagine a world in your business, if you sent off something for payment and you couldn't follow it, you didn't know where it was going, you didn't know if it was going anywhere, if anybody ever received it, until maybe 6 weeks later you think, hey, you know what, I never received payment for that. Not a good business model, not a sustainable business model. As far as how the impact of this, there's about 2,000 ENs in the United States, Puerto Rico, and Guam, with about 1 to 5 employees each. Okay, So I talked a little bit about the problem already in some of the previous slides. Suffice it to say, this is very chaotic. It's just a very chaotic environment where hardly anything is really standardized per se. And unfortunately, the person who does not benefit in this is the client, the beneficiary. They're the ones who, at the end, just do not get the amount of face time that's needed. So when we look a little bit at the business processes and we look at the workflow, the top part of this is the previous graphic that I showed you, but then down below discusses what exactly is being done within these elements. And so as far as the EN working with the beneficiary, they meet the client, they prepare them to re-enter the job workforce, they help them find a job, obtain a job, maintain the job. Now, where the bidirectional communication takes place is in tracking these earnings and then tracking these requests for payments. This is just another view of the same process that I just talked about, but this view is from more of a task perspective. So this shows you all of the tasks that are involved in administering the Ticket to Work program. And these are not necessarily sequential, but it just shows kind of a high-level view. The way that this came about was that we started this by interviewing ENs across the United States. And we interviewed about 21 of them in 3 states. And we were able to pull out from these interviews the tasks that were most important to them. It should be no surprise that the thing that was most important to them was submitting those payments, tracking those payments, and getting those payments. Okay, so this is a graphic of the application environment. We use a LAMP stack built on Sugar CRM with BERT reporting. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Ben, and he'll go through the rest of this.
All right, thanks, Sue, for that overview. So as Sue said, this really started off as a research project. Signal here. Well, I can keep going while it picks up. Really started off as a research project. We spent 6 months really looking and doing a gap analysis for these employment networks, these caseworker organizations, to understand what issues or problems they're facing as they administer this government program. And we came out with a report. It took us about 6 months to do it. We weren't particularly a big hurry, but then at that point in time, after we finished the report, a number of stakeholders told us, this is very interesting. We need to move ahead on something. Why don't you show us an example of an application you could build and have it to us within, a few weeks. And we said, put together a prototype within a few weeks. How are we going to do that? Well, our immediate thought was to look at open source solutions. We saw that a lot of some of the different types of activities that are done by these caseworkers are CRM-like, CRM-ish, in terms of dealing with clients. And so we looked at open source CRM applications and chose Sugar CRM as a platform to develop on. What we particularly liked about Sugar is that we didn't see it as just a platform where we could do only CRM-like stuff, only client management, but it's something that we could use to expand upon, extend, to do customized modules, which would be very important for us. So we got it together fairly quickly. Within 4 weeks, we at least had something to show, give an idea as to how the application might work. We expanded it out, focusing really at first on the roles and access rights and security, and then we developed our customized modules within the last 6 months. A total of about 19 modules within this application. All along, we've done this as an iterative process with users, over 100 caseworker organizations across the U.S. to develop it, refine it over time. So I already talked about this a little bit, why we chose open source. Some other constraints that we had, and the reasons for choosing open source is we had resource constraints. So what I mean by that is our funding came in chunks. It didn't come as one big contract from the U.S. government. It came in little chunks from state grants and from private foundation grants. And as a result of coming in chunks, and we needed to develop a piece at a time, a module at a time. Also, having the saying non-proprietary solution here was important here for us, as we didn't want to build something that would become proprietary, sit within a government contractor organization who then has power over the government program, and not just that, but creates restrictions, I should say, on the ability to continue an agile development process. We wanted it to be something that would remain, the ownership would not remain with one single organization. And we thought it would be a good opportunity to demonstrate the advantages of open source to Social Security Administration, who has not traditionally been used much open source in major applications. We had a number of application challenges that we needed to deal with. First and foremost are converting a number of manual and complex processes, business processes, into an electronic application. There are many different types of employment networks. It can be not-for-profit, for-profit organizations. They can be government agencies, and they all kind of do things a little bit differently. So translating that into a more standardized set of processes is very, very important. We have very non-technical users, and program rules for the particular work program change frequently. They change every year, as is the case with many government programs. So each year, calculation base for calculating earnings or what employment networks can earn changes regularly. It's a 5-year program, and so age plays a role. When retirement age is hit, they're out of the program, so we be able to track them. Age. A number of things change from the annual basis. We have to be able to track that on an ongoing basis. And we needed to also be able to make sure that this is something that could scale. As Sue said, there's over 50 or approximately 50 million people in the U.S. with disabilities. We picture that there could be over 2,000 users and over 10 million records within just a number of years, so we needed to make sure that we could scale this. So I wanted to show an example that we have of some of the, within our application here, of one of these challenges that we have, which is calculating and tracking payments. So what's very critical here and very important is that, as Sue mentioned, a person with a disability gets a job. They're assisted in getting that job by a caseworker. The caseworker gets paid for those services when that person with a disability keeps their job over a period of time. It's very important for that caseworker to know when they can submit to Social Security Administration to get a payment. They can be paid for their services, paid retrospectively. It's a milestone outcome-based system, which is a bit unique. A lot of different factors play into calculation: age, which Social Security program the individual or with a disability is enrolled in, previous employment, earnings, how much is earned on a month-to-month basis. And what has also been difficult about this in calculating and the logic that and workflow we put into the system is that the caseworker doesn't always know the complete facts often until after a record has been created. So what I mean by that is earnings can be put into the system for months and months at a time, only to learn from Social Security Administration 6 months later or a year later that the earnings were wrong and that they were not as high as they were originally reported, or if the person with the disability is on a completely different program than they reported. So we have to be able to then, in the system, be able to recalculate based on major changes in the program. So I wanted to just show an example of that quickly. So here I am in Smartworks. I am in a record for a Janice Johansson. As you can see, it's very CRM-like in that we have our client record, all the information that we need about that client. We can create tasks, create a history. We have document management for collecting documents about that particular record or for that individual. We have forms that we create. I'll list an individual work plan, for example, where a person with a disability has a contract with the caseworker, and so they can create that together. Create PDFs out of that need to be signed. We can save those. We can send those electronically. So Janice Johansson has a job as a data entry clerk here in this example, and we started entering her earnings in November of 2010, and we have earnings for her through April of 2011. Depending on the program, those earnings have to be looked at a month-to-month basis, and how that's calculated is different based on the program. So on one program, these calculations are based on payment due date or payment date. For the other Social Security program, it's prorated, or take earnings and look at the daily earnings rate and calculate it that way over 30 or 31 days on the month. We need to show the caseworker whether the earnings for this client qualify for a milestone or not, and then based on that qualification or those qualified earnings, we then can tell the user or the caseworker if a milestone has been earned or not earned, and we can change eligibility for those milestones based on many other factors. So in this case, we'll go back. We see that in March, this client did not qualify. But we find out a few months later that indeed her earnings were actually higher. So we'll go to March. We'll edit that. All of this is customized, by the way, not built into Sugar. So you can see those earnings that we can then edit. There's the month earnings that are $700. We'll edit that. Say she made $850. Nothing else changed. We'll save that. Go back to Janice's record here. See that it's changed to $850. We see now that in March, that earning does qualify for a milestone, and we can see that those milestones are now earned. So that recalculation had to be able to take place. We then can create a form called a payment request form, submit that form electronically to Social Security Administration. So I wanted to demonstrate some of the workflow that we had to build into this. It's very specific to a government program that you might not see anywhere else. But we did so in a manner using Sugar as a platform for development, thinking of it beyond just a customer relationship management. So going back to our slides here. A number of benefits that we found so far A number of benefits that we've found so far through our pilot is, I think it's pretty obvious to these kinds of systems. I mean, this is kind of the age-old story of making paper processes electronic, but in a government environment and with open source. Our users are reporting more organization. They're gaining more intelligence out of their reporting. They're using BERT as a reporting tool. I can show that to you. We've integrated that in with Sugar. They're more efficient in that they can work with a greater number of clients than they were able to in the past. And they're not dealing with a lot of the administrative overhead they were in the past. And really the outcomes that they're seeing that are important to the client is that they have more face time, or the case workers is that they have more face time with the clients, being able to see more of them and get more of them into the workforce. We're in pilot right now. We're in New York, Wisconsin, California, and Massachusetts. As said, there's 19 employment networks or caseworker organizations, 65 users, managing about 280 records or client records. And we're getting very positive feedback, and they're pushing us to expand much more quickly than we want to. We're researchers, we want to make sure everything is going just right before we expand. And where we're going from here is we really look, and some of the feedback we're getting is to expand beyond just the users as being these employment networks for clients, as our caseworkers, as the users. We want to expand Smartworks out so that employers can also have an interface into Smartworks. I mean that employers, there are many employers who are very interested in having people with disabilities work at their work location. They would like an interface where they can participate in and be candidates for employment. Beneficiaries for the people with disabilities themselves. They can have an interface to be able to upload their earnings, report a job change or status in their job, things of that nature. Would like to have that kind of interface. And then Social Security Administration as this builds out. And this will definitely be something that we're looking forward to and been in discussions with them about, is looking to expand this so that Social Security Administration can have more involvement themselves. And in that, those are some opportunities and challenges for us to see moving forward how we can take a open source platform like Sugar CRM and bring it up to a level of security that meets standards that the Social Security Administration wants. It meets FISMA requirements and things of that nature. And that's a challenge that we are facing right now. And an opportunity. As well as integration. Each state does things a little bit differently. And each state has their own systems and vendors with many different systems. And we have many different possible integration points. Fortunately for Sugar, Sugar has a nice number of possibilities as far as being able to integrate. Of course, challenges on the other side. So I think we talked about some of the reasons why we chose Sugar already. I think kind of to summarize up, when we saw that Sugar could be a platform that we could build upon beyond just CRM type activities. If we were to do it over again, I think looking back, we made a good choice to go with Sugar CRM. I think some of the real highlight points for us is that there's an open source community version of which we've built on. We have not used the commercial open source version that Sugar offers. We've done everything completely on the community version, partially because of the way that we've gotten our funding. It's come in chunks. It's been much easier for us to build modules as opposed to thinking through long-term licensing issues. Although we also like being able to have that option for moving up to a commercial open source version down the road if we decided to or needed to do something like that. But having the open source community version and seeing that it's as robust as it is has been exciting for us to work with. As far as Sugar, it's PHP based. We know that there's an enormous community of PHP developers. There's a large community of Sugar CRM developers and consultants and add-ons. So that's also nice to know that there's going to be some longevity in the program, in the platform, and that there is maturity in the software as well. We started with version 5.5. We didn't start 1.0 with all kinds of bugs or problems. There was an application we could get running with right away that we knew was going to work, and it did work the way we needed it to right away. So with that, if there's any questions that you'd like to ask about what we've done or how we've done it?
I've got about a dozen, so I'll start with one and then other people.
Awesome. And I got Vineet here and Gary to help out with any, depends on the types of questions.
Well, so this one is, all of your funding came from, not from government sources. In other words, did you have to deal with procurement issues and like being a government contractor at any point?
We did not have to deal with that. We've got, they're all grants. So
Okay.
Medicaid infrastructure grants, there's one, those are state level grants.
Okay, so there's still some qualification
There are
processes
some
to go through,
qualifications, yeah.
but it's not as high overhead as being like a federal government contractor.
That's
where you
right.
have to like triple your price just to cope with the paperwork.
Exactly,
Okay.
and it didn't take 2 years to do the procurement process. We could get
Okay.
an infrastructure grant within months. So.
All right, I'll cede the floor, but I got more.
Hi, I have a question kind of from a technical aspect. You mentioned you had to do a lot of customizations to Sugar to make it compliant with the regulations. Can you kind of elaborate on those and like were the changes you were able to make to the core product, or were you able to do it on a custom level so that the core product remained intact?
Yeah. It's been a couple years, but you're John Merchick, right?
Yeah.
John, first and foremost, thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thank
You
you.
might not remember, but at SugarCon 2 years ago, you spent some time with me,
Yes.
and that was essential time for getting our prototype ready to go to present for the initial funding request.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
thank
Glad
you.
to see it in the flesh now.
And so in looking at there were important security concerns and knowing that I was still a fledgling Sugar CRM developer, we decided to partner with an organization so we'd have a larger support base from a more mature group.
Mm-hmm.
And also it wouldn't have made sense for me to be the sole programmer with any knowledge of how something was done and something with the potential scope of this.
Right.
So for that reason, we partnered with OSS Cube, who already had experience extending Sugar's security interface. So with that, I'll give it to Vinny.
So basically, we did not change anything in the core Sugar CRM application. It's really all add-on modules that are there. We are using user management. We are using form management. What we did was build workflows which are hard-coded into the system and integrated with BERT and eFax to make sure that everything is in place. And rest, everything is all new modules. Nothing is changed in the system as such.
So for regulatory compliance, really the two features you really needed to add were, some additional security concerns. Was there also, did you have to worry about like 508 compliance and things like that, or have you not crossed that bridge yet?
Yeah, 508 compliance, is a spectrum.
Yes.
Compliance. So
Yes.
we're somewhere in that spectrum.
Okay.
We have to get further over on the spectrum to more compliance, and so we've got more issues to deal with on
Okay.
that. And we can talk more in detail about it.
Yeah.
We have more to do, and I think there's always more to do in 508.
There is a lot. Well, it's an area that at the core of the company we're working on as well. So I'm just kind of curious where you guys are at with it versus where our efforts are. So it's interesting. But I'm also just interested around like the security aspect of like, because we have a fairly robust security model, but each different entities have different requirements, and that's where I'm just curious of like what areas of the Sugar security do you have to step up a notch or do something different with because of the approach Sugar took did not meet the requirements for this.
we have to do FISMA security certification of the application, and we are going through all the paperwork right now for that.
Okay.
Yeah, but at the level of sugar security, I mean, you're already aware that in the community version, there is no roles, there is no field level security. That
Not
you
field
can-
level now.
Yeah. So all those had to be done at this particular software.
Okay, so that was kind of the big feature, okay.
Yeah, that was the big one. And then I think most of the security stuff I think is ahead, because of FISMA.
Right.
We're just getting it all.
Good. Yeah, I'll bug you for more stuff later. So
Oh, right.
talk later. No, this is very good. This is, as community manager, I really like seeing different angles that people are taking the product that are way out of the CRM roots. And this is really just an interesting approach to it, and kind of echoes a lot of what I tell people when people ask me about sugar, about using it for things other than CRM. It's like it's just a platform. You can do whatever you want with it from there. So.
Right. Do you have more questions?
I do. I guess I'll take one for my share.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what were the actual mechanisms you used for user feedback? Like what was it a Bugzilla instance somewhere, or were there like Pivotal Tracker or Tender app links on the app itself, or did they send you an email? How did you get the feedback and respond to
A
it?
couple different ways. I'll let Sue talk about that a little bit.
So early on, what we did was we did demonstrations through a webinar and got feedback that way. Now during the pilot, we're gaining feedback a couple of ways. We're using the bug tracker within Sugar CRM, and we've modified it just a little bit to be able to get the information that we need. Plus, I hold twice weekly pilot status calls. And
okay.
so they get on these calls. They go anywhere from 5 minutes to the longest has been about 45 minutes. And it's through this discussion that we're able to pull out some of the issues. It's interesting because this group of users, they want to immediately say, "Oh, this is great. This is everything we needed." And sometimes I have to really pull it out of them. Okay, that's great. We're happy to hear that. What kind of problems are you having? Because that's the whole goal behind the pilot is to find the problems, redevelop as necessary, and then get a better, more stronger, more robust product out there in the end, after the pilot is done. And so we use a variety of mechanisms, and then plus email. So some people will use the bug tracker, which is great. Some people will email. The problem that I found with email is that they don't always give me all the information I need. Like, for example, what browser are you using?
Yeah.
What precipitated this event? What were the 3 things you did before you noticed that this happened? So what we did was we redesigned the bug tracker a little bit to be able for those prompts so that they will have to answer those questions. When it's dialogue, of course, I can ask that.
Yeah.
The advantage behind the dialogue part of it is that then it gets other people to talk.
Because they're also on the call.
Yes. And sometimes we have 10 people on the call, sometimes we have 2 people on the call. It just depends on people's schedules and things like that. And so somebody might say, "Oh, I'm having this problem." I can ask, "What browser are you using?" Somebody else will say, "Oh, I'm using Chrome. I don't have that problem." "Oh, well, I have Chrome on my machine. I can use that instead. That's not a problem." But, they're having an issue in Firefox, and they get very tunnel vision when they're working. They don't think to go, "Oh, maybe I should go into Chrome." And so that's how we gather the information. Then we take that information and kind of sort it out, put priorities on it. What are first line priority items? What can wait? What can be done immediately? What's easy to develop? What can we group in with maybe other things that we're developing right now?
What's nice about Sugar is we're able to consolidate the issues, and within Sugar we can do things like put in little information pop-ups that tell the user what they're supposed to do in a certain section. So it's training them how to be a caseworker. We created a custom module as well, which has training. We have training videos for each of the modules, and so we modify those training videos based on the feedback that we get.
Do you get quick stats like on how often, like which ones of those are actually used, and how much does the application tell you about how those help mechanisms are being used?
question. How much are we collecting?
We are not collecting yet. Yeah.
Not specifically, it is available
We
for
haven't
blog
been doing
files.
the pilot.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, there's never time to do everything, I was just curious if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were using that.
Yeah, that video module is a custom module altogether, and the interesting part is that it's going to be community backed. We're going to soon release it for the community as a video help file module, and everybody can
Oh, that's great.
So this project is going to give a lot of open source modules, and there is one notification module that has been built, which is like a auto notification. As soon as you log in, you get some notification, and you have to click next before you log into the system. So which is also going into the community bag.
Can I continue? Or?
Yeah.
You
Go ahead.
can, but I
There's
think
not a huge crowd.
I just need to make one housekeeping
Yeah.
announcement, that this is officially the beginning of lunchtime, and so he's going to open the doors. We're more than happy to stay here and answer your questions, but if your stomachs are growling, feel free to leave.
Thanks.
Or
Well,
feel
so I
free to
actually
stay.
have a lunch meeting too, but I'm going to come up and give you some contact information so I can probably pick your brains and use up all your time later in the week or something.
Absolutely.
Thank
That'd be
you.
great. We'd
Really,
welcome it.
Thanks for the talk, really.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.